Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. Welcome to the Council Chamber, although we do really seem to be having quite a lot of space in relation to the number of us who are present. If I just quickly explain, to my right, going round the dais, are my fellow councillors, and it will be the five of us who will make the decisions on the cases in front of us this evening. To my left are the officers who are going to present the cases and also offer advice. We're also joined by other officers. If people need to speak, then I'll introduce them and explain how they fit in to proceedings. So if we can start, are there any apologies for absence? I think there are not, because everyone who was intended to be here this evening is indeed here. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
I have one. There's an application for property in my ward, Pembridge Ward, so I would like to not attend for that session.
Okay, that's understood. Perhaps this is the application Notting Hill, the Notting Hill Hotel, yes?
Yes, Chair, correct. It's Ruby Hotel, Notting Hill Gate.
Yes, and I think maybe for that, if you just took a seat at the back, that would be fine. Actually, for the same application, you'll see in the pack there are representations by Mr. and Mrs. Everett. They are people that I know, they're friends of mine, but I haven't discussed the application for the discharge of the condition with them, so I think I'm fine to carry on and consider it. Moving on.
Chair, can I also...
yes, Councillor Ali.
Thank you. Can I also point that there are two applications that falls in within my ward, Delgado Ward, and I haven't been in touch with anyone, or anyone hasn't been in touch with me. If I feel during the meeting, I will let you know if I don't have to include any comments, or we will see how it goes. But just to declare, there are two applications that will be in my ward, and 33 Bang Bang Avenue, and another one is there are two applications, and I will keep you informed for both of them.
Okay, I think if you haven't been involved in discussing the applications with objectors or supporters, but simply they're in your ward and so obviously you're aware of them, then I think it's fine to carry on and sit on the committee.
That's what I thought in the beginning, but just in case any conflict of interest may start, I have no idea who has been done, and I haven't been involved in any negotiation about it, so I think it will be okay to carry on with that then.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you very much indeed for that.
Chairman, that's fine, but I didn't catch which two applications they were.
Yes. Yeah. Kazim, which are the two addresses? They'll be in the North Pack, won't they, sir?
The first one is 33 Bang Bang Avenue. It's London W10 6DJ. So that's 33. And the other one is 17 Hewitt Street. So those are the two properties.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good, thank you very much indeed. If we can now look at the minutes, please, of the meeting that was held on the 22nd of June. I've got the minutes here. Can we agree that I sign those as a record, please? Okay, thank you. That's very good. Now, moving on to this evening's agenda, I think it might be helpful if I just run through the order in which we're going to discuss things this evening. In a moment or two, we will consider the application at Hewitt Street. We will then move on to consider the three applications relating to property on the Fulham Road. From there, we will consider Lansdowne Court, Lansdowne Crescent, Pangbourne Avenue, Polton Street, 20 Canning Place, before considering Chelsea Common, the Latimer Industrial Estate Unit on Latimer Road, the Notting Hill application, Farm Cottage, Farm Place, and then concluding with the application at 1 Tor Gardens. Okay? Good. Well, in that case, I think we can turn to the separate strategic team pack, and I think Joe Whitworth, Joe, you're going to introduce this for us. Joe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll just wait for that to come up on the screen. This application is a Section 73 minor material amendment application to vary a previously approved redevelopment of 15 to 17 Hewer Street, a site which forms part of the Council's New Homes Delivery Programme. The previous permission granted late last year, and which has now been implemented by works on site, granted partial demolition and rebuilding of the building, which is not listed but is a positive contributor to the Oxford Gardens conservation area in which it is located. The permission also granted a single-storey extension to the northern wing of the building, as well as its change of use from the former funeral home use to residential use, providing 10 market homes and 10 affordable homes. Following implementation, works on site have uncovered the need for a number of amendments to the consented proposals. While no objections have been received to the proposals, as Council's own development, the committee is asked to consider the proposals. This CGI provides an overview of the scheme, with the courtyard and its eastern and western wings retained, partially rebuilt, the main retained courtyard elevation, and the additional storey extension constructed in brickwork to match. The further eastern part of the building is the retained eastern elevation of the existing building. The amendments proposed include additional demolition of the building to the inner courtyard elevations, as well as the far eastern elevation of the building. The proposals also include the removal of 4 Category C trees along the northern boundary of the building, and a number of minor design changes as set out on the slide. Finally, amendments to the wording of conditions 12, 13 and 23 are proposed. Those amendments would continue to allow us to secure details relating to noise insulation and land contamination at appropriate times in the development programme, while enabling further flexibility in the timeframes for the application to ascertain and provide the information required. The amendments to the trigger points of these conditions are largely immaterial and are considered acceptable, so I won't deal with them in any great detail. Moving to the minor changes, this elevation shows the building broadly as consented, with the minor changes noted on the slide. All of the changes noted here have a negligible impact on the external appearance of the building and are in reality almost indiscernible from the consented proposals. The changes would continue to preserve the character and appearance of the building and not have any impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area. Within the eastern and western courtyard elevations, further demolition is now proposed to that previously approved. The left-hand drawing shows in white the extent of the elevations previously approved to be retained, while the right-hand drawing shows entire demolition of the inner courtyard elevations are now proposed. Having started work on site, it has become clear that to retain these patches of brickwork is incredibly challenging and in reality of little architectural merit. The proposal is therefore now to demolish the elevations, clean the brickwork, and rebuild with the same materials. As with the inner courtyard elevations, additional demolition is now proposed to the upper part of the eastern elevation of the building. Again, having started work on site, this elevation has been found to have significant structural defects. Retention of this element is difficult not only in terms of practicality, but also poses a significant health and safety risk to workers while retained in situ. Therefore, the upper part of the building is proposed to be removed, the brickwork again cleaned and rebuilt like for like. Lastly, there are currently 4 trees along the northern boundary of the building, 2 magnolias and 2 privets, all of which are Category C trees. These trees are already constrained by the small landscaping strip and are of poorer quality, trees that would now unlikely to be planted in this location if given the chance again. Their removal has been shown as required to fully deconstruct the northern elevation as consented, as well as to place a new service run of drainage along this northern boundary. Their loss would be offset by re-landscaping of the strip itself, as well as a replacement tree planting scheme which will be secured in the legal agreement. Turning to the heritage balance. The demolition being proposed to this positive contributor results in less than substantial harm to the conservation area. Less than substantial harm was also identified in the previously consented scheme. In accordance with the MPPF, great weight should be given to this identified harm, and the harm should be outweighed by the public benefits of the proposals. In this case, the public benefits include bringing a vacant building back into its optimum viable use to provide 20 new homes, of which 10 are affordable, as well as the rebuild and reuse of existing fabric and the high-quality architecture of the replacement building. Our view is that in balancing the identified harm against these benefits, this harm is indeed outweighed. That concludes the presentation, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. So, colleagues, who'd like to go first? Maxwell.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the trees being removed. Obviously, they're Category C. What does Category C mean? And then the officer talks about a replacing tree planting scheme. Can you just get a bit more information about that? What does that consist of?
So the grading system is a sliding scale from A, B, C, and then ungraded trees. So these are of a poor quality on that sliding scale. So that's essentially what it's intended to demonstrate, is that when you assess the quality, lifespan, etc., they're put into a category. And grade A is the highest, and category C in this instance is of a much poorer quality than the better quality.
Is that in terms of how the condition of the tree as opposed to what type of tree it is?
Say again, sorry.
So it's the condition of the tree as opposed to if it's a sycamore or whatever?
Yes, that's exactly right. So all those species would come into it as well, but in terms of the category itself, considers a range of matters, with the quality being a part
And then
of that.
the tree planting scheme, are the trees going to be planted elsewhere in the borough or on site, or how does that work?
So the tree replacement scheme will be secured in the local area, and the local area will be defined in the legal agreement, and a plan appended to it showing an area in which trees can be planted, given that much of the land that trees would be planted is council owned. We're leaving it fairly broad to determine what appropriate locations those would be in terms of discussions with council.
And just finally, how is that enforced to make sure they do actually?
So it would be required in the legal agreement, so a tree planting scheme to be submitted to the council and approved by the director, and then that would have to be implemented prior to occupation of the building. So prior to residents moving in, there's an obligation on the council as applicant to have completed that scheme.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me now? In terms of the interest that I've declared earlier, this 15 to 17 Heroes Street is in my ward, and I have been involved one way or another, the consultation, because it's my ward, and I have met a number of residents, and it's, I think, welcomed by the residents in my ward and in general RBKC to get new homes in the borough and allow those who have been in the waiting list and those who require in the long term. So in general, what I'm trying to say here is we welcome, and I think we should, this will be a good way to help with housing crisis in the borough, and I do welcome that the 20 homes has been suggested. However, what we've talked about was during the consultation and before that 10 properties will be the market, that's absolutely fine, market rent, but the other 10 will be, actually it's been said, it will be for key workers and specifically doctors and nurses who are very close proximity to the hospital, St. Charles Hospital. So I wonder if the officers can explain to me what they mean by London living rent that could have many meanings. I think what we've talked about was the key workers' property, and 10 of the new properties will be allocated for the key workers. So could you please explain to me the difference between saying a key worker homes and London living rent?
Certainly. So London living rent simply refers to an affordability criteria which is set by the Mayor of London and benchmarked annually to be updated. So key worker housing is where you essentially limit the homes to only be for key workers. What's secured by this application is homes at discounted London living rent, which would allow the council's housing team to nominate anyone into those affordable homes, including key workers. So it's to address an identified need at the time, and that may well be key workers, as you say, but it also may well be other families who aren't necessarily key workers, but meet the affordability criteria for affordable homes in the borough, i.e. they're on our waiting list and in need of homes at that affordability band.
Chair, do you allow me to continue with a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Thank you. In terms of the affordability, could be in different category. What's affordable to some is absolutely unaffordable to others. So how do you categorize affordability, and what is the specific number? If you give me figures, or if you give the panel figures, that will tell us what kind of affordability is. Because at the first consultation, since I've been involved 2019, since I was elected to be the councillor for Delgado Ward, the aim was at this property, at these new properties, specifically Hewitt Street, to be 3 sort of 10 years. For example, private renting to make sure that we get something, at least the money out of it to repay the money that we're spending on it. Not to mention the support that the Mayor of London has given us, but also key workers as well as social housing. However, I think after the officers and everyone came together, we've realized that the point is to make it social housing for other properties, but this specific 15 to 17 Hewitt Street will be key workers as well as new market homes. But what I'm now saying, realizing from what you've said is now it's been slightly changed. So I would like you to give us a figure of what you see, what you think is affordable to one and not affordable to others. If not, should we just leave it 10 properties for key workers because of the proximity for the hospital, so that the doctors and the nurses who serve our constituents can live there and they know they have a key worker homes that is dedicated for them? Thank you.
So the 10 homes are guided by the council's community housing SPD, which it adopted last year, and in that document it sets out what the council considers to be genuinely affordable homes for people in our borough. What that does is it restricts, and for this scheme it's true, it restricts London living rent to be capped to Notting Dale ward levels, which are the cheapest ward levels in our borough. For a 1-bedroom apartment, that's £958 per month, and for a 2-bedroom dwelling, that's £1,065 a month. So that secures affordable homes at genuinely affordable rents in the borough, and we secure the nominations to those homes within the legal agreement. The council's housing team can then nominate as they see fit into those homes, and whether that's key worker housing or other people on its waiting list that require homes at those affordability bands, that's for them to decide based on their latest evidence.
Okay, thank you. Dorry, do you have a point?
Thanks, Chair. I don't actually have any real questions on this. I just would like to say I think that all the relevant planning issues have been covered. These buildings, or 15 to 17 Hewitt Street, may have some historical value because it's been there for a long time, but I wouldn't call it one of our best looking buildings, so whatever has been planned for modifications to accommodate the 20 homes, I think is well worth doing. And I think all these issues have actually been covered and addressed in the report. So I welcome the report and I'm very much in favour.
Yes. No, thank you very much indeed. And actually, I entirely agree with the point you've just made. Aaron, would you like to just quickly ask a question to Mr. Whitworth? Or?
I just want to make a comment, Chairman. I
Okay.
entirely support this application. I mean, the new homes program would obviously generate more homes for our borough, so I've wholeheartedly support this application.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Good. Well, thank you very much. I think it's important to emphasise this particular application. It's seeking to vary some of the details of something which we granted a number of months ago. So some of the wider issues about the housing mix, in effect, they were decided first time around. I don't think it feels as though we're probably in agreement about this. So in that case, I think I can probably just put the recommendation to the vote straight away. So the recommendation is to grant, subject obviously the various conditions set out in the report. By a show of hands, can I see those in favour, please? So that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed for that. Just before Mr. Whitworth heads off, I think Joe, you're going to be leaving the council in the next month or so, and I think it's possible this might be the last time that you actually present anything to members on a planning committee. Is that right? Do you think that's right?
Yeah, that's correct, Chairman.
Okay, all right. Well, on behalf of the whole committee, and obviously my colleagues who are not here this evening, I think we should express our thanks to Joe Whitworth for all he's done. I think you've been planning officer, I think it's four and a bit years, isn't it? Something like that?
Yeah, coming up to 5 years.
I think I can recall, and I think we should just wish you well, and I think you'll still be around for a little while yet.
I will.
So you're not able to escape just yet, but anyway, good luck. And,
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Very good. Thanks, Joe. So if we can now move on to the South Pack and the applications at 236 Fulham Road. Now, I think, Katie, you're going to introduce these, aren't you? Katie.
I am indeed. Thank you, Chairman. Just for everyone's benefit in the room, there are 3 applications at this site, and given they are all linked, we've decided to cover it by one presentation. So I will run through all 3 applications in one go, but then we will be making 3 separate decisions tonight. We do have a registered speaker as an objector and the agent here as well this evening, and they'll have the opportunity to speak on both the planning applications as well, so they will have 2 opportunities to speak. So on to the presentation. So the site is the ground floor and basement levels of the building on the corner of Fulham Road and Hollywood Road, previously occupied by Carluccio's restaurant and then Coates restaurant. Above the site are the residential units at first and second floor level, known as Brompton Cottages, and then further down on the other side along Hollywood Road are other residential properties. The photographs on the screen now just show you the elevations since Coates Restaurants vacated the premises. I've included them because you can see a bit more of the site context, including Fulham Road there and the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital opposite. So the first of the applications to consider, which is item S73 in your pack, the first of the 3, is for shopfront elevations on both the frontages. So looking first at the Fulham Road elevation, the application seeks permission to apply blue tiles to the frontage, a new shopfront including bifold doors on the left-hand side, new doors in the middle, and then bifold windows to the right-hand side of the entrance, all within the existing openings, and then new retractable awnings. And then on the Hollywood Road frontage, the same in terms of the application of the tiles, and then bifolding doors in the existing openings along with the awnings above. So those are the works under that application. Moving to application S74, the second one in your pack. Again, it's for the changes to the shopfront in terms of the tiling and windows. But in addition, on the Hollywood Road elevation, it's also proposed to install some fixed seating which will be located within the recessed areas of the shopfront, so set in from the pavement within the shopfront, in front of those bifold doors. Probably clearest from the top drawing there on the screen, which shows you the plan, and then, oh, sorry, the wrong way. In section there as well, you can see the recessed nature of that fixed seating there. It's where the planters are currently located within that elevation. Also under that proposal, there are 6 pendant heaters that would be located by the awning there, as you can see in the section. And then the third application is for control of advertisement consent for the signage on both elevations. So that would comprise the dark blue lettering to the fascia on both elevations, the simple white lettering on the awnings, and a non-illuminated projecting sign on the corner. So this is on the Fulham Road elevation, but on the corner of the site. And on the screen there for you is the Hollywood Road elevation, just again showing the signage in situ. The fascia signage on this one would be illuminated, the main signage in the middle. The last slide I thought was worth just mentioning, and you'll have seen it in the report, is the 2019 application, which was brought by Coat Restaurants to the council. This included bifold doors in the location that you could now see them in situ. We did refuse this application back in 2019, and it was appealed, and we lost the appeal. It was allowed by the inspector. The difference between that scheme and what you are now looking at mainly relates to the second application. I'll just flick back through just to make it clear, and it's to do with the seating. So as I showed, there would be under the second of the applications new fixed seating within these recessed areas in front of the bifold doors, and this did not form part of the scheme approved by the inspector at the appeal. And that's the presentations. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I think Ms. Ahmed, you're able to join us and would wish to speak. When you're ready, please go ahead. Now, if you wish, you've got up to 3 minutes to talk about the first planning permission application, and then, if you wished, you could then have a further 3 minutes to discuss the application that involves the seating, if you wished. It's really up to you as to how you would like to do this, and obviously Mr. Evans will have a chance to respond after you've spoken.
I have about 3 minutes and 10 seconds of the first
Okay.
one, retractable doors, and 2 minutes of 50 seconds of the other one. So I'm going to make it in 6 for sure.
right.
I'm right
Well,
10 seconds over if I don't go too quickly.
I think we
Please excuse
can.
my
I'm sure we'll be able to
nervousness
manage.
and my warbled voice.
So please, because you live immediately above, don't you?
I live right above.
So please,
Can I
whenever
ask
you're
Katie
ready.
one question, just one question?
Yes, of course.
Katie, is that, those chairs there, are they going to be, so they're in front of the bifolding doors, so that means at night
Yeah.
anybody can sit there when the restaurant's closed? Is that true? Or can you not get, is that? I didn't understand that.
They are to be fixed to the shopfront, and the proposals
the
don't,
doors
as far
don't
as
come
I'm
in front of it.
aware.
Chair, sorry, could we ask the applicant to speak into the microphone a bit more loudly and clearly? I can't hear it very well.
Me?
Plus, I'm having a bit of a difficulty this week because
Yeah.
of some problem.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I was asking if the chairs
Yeah.
at night after the restaurant is closed can be sat upon by anyone passing in the street.
It might well be something that the agent could just clarify for us.
Yeah.
But yes, the drawings
I can't see.
show that it is fixed seating within that recessed area. And as far as I'm aware, there aren't any shutters that come down. We certainly haven't applied for any.
I think what I suggest is,
I couldn't
please, you go ahead and
Yeah.
speak.
Okay.
And then the points you've just made may well be taken up by my colleagues
Sorry, I just-
with the agent.
I didn't want to get it
perhaps
wrong on
later.
this.
So please go ahead when you're ready.
Okay.
And
My name is Seher, and I've lived in Brompton Cottages for over 35 years. I've seen it go from a Barclays bank to a string of bars and most recently restaurants. When the first planning application for a change of use from the bank to A3 occurred, we were not successful in our objections. However, you will note from the original change of use planning application that many of the stipulations in place today were made to protect the lives of residents living above. These original restrictions included the restriction on hot takeaway food, the number of covers, open doors, loudspeakers, and limited opening hours. I believe the council should please keep to the spirit of the original planning stipulations for this A3 premises and not allow this planning creep, which includes open doors and further noise for residents. Unfortunately, the reference to the original planning consent was not included in the relevant history section of the current planning report. The first set of planning notifications for Megan's bifolding doors and awnings never arrived to any of us residents. Despite this occurrence, I counted 10 comments, objections on your site, including one from an RBKC councillor. However, the planning report does not think these noise objections are worthy of merit and says you should approve this application without any proof or science to dismiss our noise-related objections. Nothing in your planning report refers to the size of this A3 location. As far as I'm aware, there are no restaurants with 160 covers on the entire Fulham Road, and definitely not 200 meters down the Hollywood Road either. I suppose when a disturbance is not on your doorstep, it seems less important. Please note that the residents' windows above the restaurants are huge and run the length of the site, something we as leaseholders cannot change. The sound leakage is very substantial to the flats above. I have lived with the noise from the Fulham Road for many years, but when it is directly below my windows and with the prospect of additional open doors and external seating, the situation will become much, much worse. I know this is true from real experience, as we've had a problem with a particular group of antisocial delivery scooter drivers congregating on our corner for the past several years. There was a traffic camera placed on this corner to prevent them exiting the road the wrong way and deter the drivers from congregating. However, the council has no powers to give them a ticket for evading the camera for backing out. Hence, we are stuck with them shouting to friends, revving engines, and tooting as they wait for a potential order to hit their apps. So I know what it is like to have people eating, chatting, playing phone videos, and hear it from below my living room and bedroom windows. While the last sitting of this committee refused the retractable doors after many residents objected, the coat chain appealed. The Secretary of State upheld the claim, making comparisons to other restaurants on Hollywood Road without noting that 236 Fulham Road is materially larger than any nearby site or faraway site. Retractable doors will be open all day long and will cause a lot of noise leakage to our living quarters above. The building is not well soundproofed. It was a bank, and we are regularly disturbed by noise of doors opening and closing, the sound of chairs being scraped along the floor, and especially when those places choose to clean between midnight and 5 a.m. The other restaurants on the Hollywood Road are continual source of complaints for the community, so these should not be used as a precedent. I'm also objecting to the very low awnings to make it very difficult to navigate that corner. The opening and closing of the awnings is also a noise issue. During the short tenure of COAT, we were frequently woken up by the closing of the awning with a loud bang at night when they opened early a.m. I ask you to refuse the recommendation to approve the application for opening doors and awnings and stand up for the rights of long-term RBKC residents.
Okay, thank you very much. So if I could ask Mr. Evans, I think you're speaking on behalf of the applicant, yes? So whenever you're ready, if you would like to speak primarily to the first application in the pack, so the planning permission relating to the doors, essentially. So in a similar fashion, you've got 3 minutes as well. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. I'd just like to start by just giving a statement of our operation as Megan's Cafe. Megan's is an all-day family offer. We are more a cafe than anything else. We serve significantly more guests before 6 p.m. than after 6 p.m. Alcohol transactions make up less than 20% of our purchases, and coffee outsells alcohol significantly. Our alcohol range is very limited. We do not sell draft beer. We have one type of bottled lager, one craft lager, and a handful of red and white wines, and a very limited cocktail offering. We do not have a bar or allow vertical standing drinkers. You can only order alcohol if seated at a table via a waiter, and you will get charged service charge. As you can see, we are not a late night operation, and alcohol is very much an ancillary to our offer. Our bottomless brunch offer is in line with current dining trends, and it's a limited period between 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. and it's sitting only, and you only get 90 minutes of bottomless drinking. The team is trained to identify drunk patrons, and it is within our terms and conditions to refuse sale of alcohol to to people who are intoxicated. For this particular restaurant, the official policy will be that outdoor seating area on Fulham Road, which has the capacity to seat 12 people, will only be available to customers that order a substantial meal. The bifold doors will be closed at 9 p.m. and no customers will be served or seated in this area after this time. And now, just to address a couple of points by the objector. The first one regarding the fixed chairs. I understand the concern regarding these chairs being used after hours, so we are more than happy to have these as removable seats that can be taken in once the doors have closed at 9 p.m. at night. In regards to the size of the restaurant, our proposed scheme is comparable to the existing scheme or that of which Coke Brasserie offered previous to its closure during the pandemic. And thirdly, the awnings that we have proposed are to replace the existing awnings as you see in place in Coke Brasserie, like for like. So in terms of the advertising, it's much of a like-for-like alteration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Now, would you like to, Simon, would you like to speak to the second planning application now? Again, you've got up to 3 minutes if you wish.
Okay. So I refer again to the size of the restaurant and the location of the seating. Why does a restaurant need further space when it has 160 covers inside? The previous chains were never able to...
Can I stop you there 1 second, please? That was S74, and which one will objector speaking to now? Is it which S74 is speaking to now? Because the other one was S73. Thank you.
Sorry. Why does a restaurant need further space when it has 160 covers? The previous chains were never able to fill the inside space, and now it seems Megan's wants to expand the site yet again. The planning report says that this external seating will not be a hindrance to a very busy pavement on Hollywood Road with a BT box directly in front of the external seating area, making the pavement a very narrow passage. The external seating will now be in an outside alcove, again a planning creep, increasing the square footage of the restaurant to benefit the freeholder and the tenant. And nothing will prevent customers from exiting the restaurant onto Hollywood Road. The existing design plan does not appear to have any barriers preventing customers exiting this way, or indeed from people stopping on the pavement communicating with those seated at tables. There is a very busy bus stop in front of this area as well, and this corner is frequently, people go onto the road in order to be able to cross the street, which has been mentioned in a lot of the objections. The external seating will primarily run below the windows to our living rooms and bedrooms. I can block out some of the noise by keeping my windows closed and putting on the TV, but does that sound fair to you? I'm self-employed and I work from home, so a simple 9 p.m. curfew on outside seating or open doors is not very helpful. We have flat roofs and these properties get really warm and airless, and we need to be able to open our windows. I don't also need to have heaters placed beneath our flat, which are not good for the environment and also no doubt will be noisy. The windows on 1 to 3 Brompton cottages are huge and run the length of the restaurant, and as I have said, this is something we cannot change, and noise travels differently compared to sash windows. Please note, we have a huge common area above the restaurant, and the fact that this building can be redeveloped is not lost on our freeholder. This planning creep is having a material negative impact on the leaseholders, and which is also not lost on the freeholder. They've approached 2 of the 4 leaseholders recently, in the last 2 months, to buy the leasehold, and have been successful in one case. This leaseholder does not want to move, but like all of us, is very tired of every new chain adding more AC units, more refrigeration units onto our roof, and now this planning request from Megan's has been the last straw. Please don't help them by increasing the uncertainty we now face, which may force us to have no choice but to move elsewhere, sell to the freeholder, as no sane person is going to want to move in above a restaurant which has open doors and external seating. Many of us have owned our properties for several decades now and have really made our homes happy little cottages. Lastly, please note, this is an area where commercial tenants are changing constantly. This site could easily become a more drinking-oriented bar in the future, and then there is a risk that an open restaurant will allow patrons to stand outside, not only impacting the residents above, but the patients trying to rest and recuperate in the Chelsea Westminster Hospital opposite. Again, I ask you to refuse the planning application for further seating placed externally and for heaters underneath my flat for noise and disturbance reasons, and to keep within the original A3 planning license, which asks to respect the amenity, quote-unquote, of the neighboring property, close quotes. The owners of the properties across the road on Hollywood Road, as well as above this site and around the corner, have all objected, so please do not let us down. One of the questions was, has Megan's contacted me? Well, Megan's didn't contact any of the residents about their plans.
I think I'm going to have to stop you there because we're
That's it.
quite over the 3 minutes. But thank you very much indeed for that. Now, Mr. Evans, do you want to respond to, so we're really addressing the second application now, please, when you're ready.
So I don't have a direct response to the second application in terms of that application pertaining to the external seating and the heaters. I just wanted to note that the bifolding doors on Fulham Road are existing bifolding doors, and that and the issue of the seating is my understanding that as it's within our demise, we don't actually need to seek planning permission for the seating area. And lastly, you mentioned about energy consumption. It is also a concern of ours, energy consumption. One of the reasons for opening up the doors is to get fresh ventilation into the space, which is one of the government's guidelines pertaining to the COVID virus.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So next we have an opportunity, members of the committee can ask either the objector or the applicant questions. I would actually like to go first and then Maxwell. Can I ask, Mr. Evans, can I just be clear on the second planning permission? So this is S74 in terms of our sheets and things. Did I hear correctly that the applicant would be prepared to have seating that would be removed at 9 p.m. Is that something that you would accept as a condition? I would have to take officer advice about exactly how we did that, but is that what you said? Is that right?
So what we originally said in the design and access statement is that those bifold doors will be closed at 9 p.m. And that no customers will be served or seated in this area after this time. Obviously, when the doors there might be patrons sitting at the tables after 9 p.m., but there will be no one further. There will be no one after that time. And then once those patrons have left, and like I mentioned, they won't be served alcohol after 9 p.m. Those chairs can be. We are more than happy to move those into our premises.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for that. So Maxwell, now, if we can try and we need to be very disciplined here about precisely which application and who we are asking a question of. Do you see what I mean? So Maxwell, do you want to go next?
Thank you, Chair. You sort of stole my question, really, which was the requirement about having the doors closed and tables kept out of use after 9 p.m, as Councillor Charles Williams suggested in his objection. I guess, actually, as I was hearing this application, this is questions for S74, which is the maintenance of the external seating, because I worry that external seating, sitting there, getting to the forces of wind and rain and everything, that this could get a bit grubby after a while. So I worry about the maintenance of that and how you're going to maintain it. So that's for the applicant.
Well, I'm not sure if you're familiar with our restaurants, but we keep our restaurants in spick-span condition. We cater to clientele who are after quality and have a keen eye for detail. And we have a maintenance team in-house, so any maintenance issues are dealt with very quickly.
Just to follow up, this type of external seating, have you done this at other sites? Is this a common aspect? And then in terms of having it as a removable, which has been suggested earlier, a removable thing, is that practical? Is this going to cost you more? Is this How are you going to maintain that? Because obviously people want nice seating, but if you want to take it out all the time, it also needs to be flexible.
Outdoor seating is one of our offers that we try introduce in all of our restaurants. As we're mostly a daytime cafe, when on the odd day where there is good weather, we like to have outdoor dining. Now, there's a good deal of the year where these chairs will not be able to be used in the case of strong winds or a thunderstorm or extreme cold conditions, in which case, if the neighbors decide that they would prefer that the seating to not be fixed, we would move it out of place on those days. But we would like to have the option of external seating, just because it's something that is part and parcel of our brand.
Okay, thank you. Kasim and then Dori.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the, as you said specifically, this is the outdoor seating and S74, so it's just on the point. We understand the need for outdoor space and outdoor seating because of what we've gone through and what we are actually going through, which is COVID-19, and the need for local businesses to grow and get customers, but not the expense of long-term residents. Business come and go, and sometimes they stay a long time, but residents mostly will be there, and that's where they live and where they raise families. My question to you is, my second question is if whatever we decide today, residents have an issue and business may have an issue, would you be willing to work with each other regardless of the outcome of today's meeting?
Yeah, well, we are a neighborhood cafe, so we do rely heavily on our surrounding neighborhood. So I think we would work with the neighbors, but 9 p.m. is a time that our new staff will be trained, and it will be in the training manual that is the time that all alcohol can be stopped serving. I imagine there will be keen eyes on us at the beginning, making sure that we stick to those rules. So it will definitely be a part of our training process and the store policy.
Chair, if you allow me a follow-up, please. The time served and the time you stopped noises and what bothers neighbors is quite different. You can stop serving 9 o'clock, but people may be still there, customers may still be there and may cause some issues. If you don't mind, if you can answer to that rather than not just at the time you stop serving.
Like I previously mentioned, our staff are trained to notice drunk patrons, and it's in our terms and conditions to stop serving people intoxicated. So we would make it clear to the waiting staff that drunk people outside, they best better be served their bill and not allowed to continue drinking.
My question also is to the objector, if you don't mind, if they can work with each other.
Well, considering that Megan's made no effort, which is when I finished, to contact us, I'm really not sure. They keep saying they're a community restaurant. I asked them why they wanted open doors, and they said because they wanted more light in their restaurant. And I said, well, why do you have awnings? And I didn't get a reply to that message. So I was like, if you want more light, you have open doors, but then you have awnings, which doesn't have open doors. And it just didn't make sense. And I said, you've got 160 people with noise outside, and you want open doors. And this is the reason in the Carluccio's application as well in 2004, when they applied for bifolding doors, this has been refused twice by the council, not only with Coat, but prior to that. And it was also something that the bars wanted when the bank changed to Fuller's Brewery, and it was never allowed because the noise, just our windows are like, 10 feet by 6 feet high. I wish they weren't so big. You open a window and all the noise just comes upstairs. It comes from the road, it comes from anywhere. It's really hard to open a window. I literally sit in a really hot flat. You talk about COVID and helping restaurants. Well, some of us have to stay in our places as well with trying to work from home. I lost my job during COVID and now have a job which I can't go into the office. I work from home all day long. I promise you to deal with the delivery drivers downstairs. I'll just say this, who are making a noise. I have my TV on loud. I bought a new pair of very expensive headphones. It's really hard. And now you're going to let the restaurants sprawl out onto the neighborhood. It's disheartening that you won't listen to the original the original license for this place, which said, please don't mess with the amenity of the neighbors above.
Okay, thank you. Dorrie, did you have a question?
Thanks. I'm not quite sure whether these questions are for the applicant or the officer. So, because of the overlap between S73 and S74, in one or two cases, it's difficult to separate them. So let's start with S73. But please let me know who would answer it. The thing I didn't get about the awning extension, the awning extends 2 meters and the pavement is 2 meters. How can it not cover the whole footway? Because there's a comment about not, making sure it doesn't cover the whole footway. So I'm a bit unclear as to how that works. Maybe I missed something.
I think that's a question to Mr. Evans. Can you help us with that point?
The awning, it's going to be 2 meters, but 2 meters deep.
Sorry, could you speak up a bit? I'm sorry, I'm having a bit difficulty this week. Next week.
The proposed awnings are proposed to be 2 meters deep. The pavement is slightly bigger than that. Looking at it now, I think those awnings can be reduced below 2 meters, not as deep as 2 meters. Basically, what we're trying to achieve is to replace the existing awnings like for like, but obviously with our own advertising.
So that could be made clearer. Maybe the officers can work on that. Thank you. Okay. The second thing is just to clarify it, because I think some of the objectors may have misinterpreted, or I have. These bifolding doors are replacement for existing bifolding doors. Is that correct?
No, sorry. There is one existing bifold door on the Fulham Road elevation.
So what's on Hollywood Road?
So on Hollywood Road, you have fixed windows, full height fixed glazing, and it's within those openings that we are proposing to put our bifold doors.
So I'm not clear why in paragraph 6.3 it says replacement of the existing timber framed bifold doors in S74.
So that's referring to the existing bifold on Fulham Road, which is, if you're looking at the entrance on the left-hand side of the entrance.
Sorry, I appear to be confused here.
Can I just say something? Yeah, okay.
Sorry to clarify this.
Yeah, try and...
It says here in S74, proposed shopfront alterations would include the replacement of the existing timber-framed bifold doors on the elevation fronting Hollywood Road with aluminium, different type, but it says bifold doors. So now you're saying there's no bifold doors there? Because I had a look at the cot
Chairman, perhaps
thing there before, which was up there. So I'm really unclear.
Just hold on a second.
Just perhaps I can help. I think what the officer is applying to there is the 2019 scheme that was allowed at appeal was for bifold doors on both elevations. So on the Hollywood Road elevation, under the appeal scheme, there were bifolding windows on that elevation as well.
Right. Okay.
It looks as though Coate maybe didn't implement that part of the permission,
No,
but it was granted.
That does make sense. That makes sense.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Dorothy, do you have any other questions to either the
I'm just,
applicant or the objector?
Okay, well, I think then I have just for the officer, but maybe that's later then. I have one question for the officer. Should I ask that later or now?
Yes, we'll come to that later.
Okay.
Okay, so, good. So, are there any other questions to either the objector?
Well, I suppose I could ask, looking at the alcove of the existing, I'm just wondering how you fit a table in, but maybe the pictures are not sufficient to judge this, but I guess that's an internal problem for the applicant as to how to place tables actually there in the alcove, because it doesn't look wide enough. But maybe inside, it extends inside another platform.
Yeah, our proposal is to set the shopfront back slightly back from the original line, so we will be going further back into our demise to achieve that. It's not by much. It's about 150 millimeters that we will be recessing the shopfront line from the original.
Okay, thanks. That's it. Thank you.
Good. Arian, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Question to applicant Mr. Evans. In terms of the bifolding doors, are you prepared to have an automatic bifolding door, so which obviously opens up when the customer comes in and then closes up automatically? Is that feasible? Is that viable? I mean,
So those bifold doors will not be used for entrance. The bifold doors are within the 3 alcoves, or the 3 proposed bifold doors that we are looking to include in our scheme. They will not be for entrance. Literally the doors are to open up, bring ventilation into the space and light into the space.
just to follow up, so no customer will be allowed to walk in through that door?
No customer will be allowed to walk through that door.
And walk out as well?
Pardon me?
Walk in and walk out?
Yeah, so because the doors will be directly faced with the external seating, there will be tables and chairs in place during operating hours, and it's a raised platform, so it won't appear as an obvious entrance into the restaurant. It will be crowded with furniture.
So, can I ask a question to the objector? Ms. Ahmed, regardless of the bifolding doors, if they're external seating, the noise will be the same regardless if there's a bifolding door. Is there any comment on that?
I've objected to both. I don't think there's any impediment from somebody jumping off the external seating, going down one step and leaving the restaurant that way. I'm also objecting to the bifolding doors because it'll just make more noise coming, like our windows. I mean, I wish they'd show these pictures with our windows. They're right above where that blue line is. It's not like, and it's a long window, so it's, you know, it'd just be nice if you could show pictures with, showing our, right there.
If you would like to compromise, which trade would you compromise on, like bifolding or external seat, or would you not?
I just don't want noise coming into my windows. I'm asking just for that. I don't see why it shouldn't stay the same as it is now. There's windows closed, they have all this space inside. They want to put chairs, put them on the Fulham Road side where we haven't got windows there.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Good. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for coming along and addressing us. That's very helpful. We now move on to a different part of the discussion, which is where my colleagues and myself can ask questions of officers. I'd like to go first, if I may, and I'm referring to the first planning permission application, which is S73. I just wanted to be clear with Katie Harrell that I've got this right. So this is based, these are about the doors, and we're saying that although the council, we had previously refused various applications, but an inspector on appeal had allowed them, and that they had been allowed on both frontages of this building, even though the old code didn't seem to have done it other than just on one side. Is that correct? I got that right?
That's correct, Chairman. So there were bifolding doors on both the elevations. That's the Fulham Road elevation and the Hollywood Road elevation. As I said, it's apparent that perhaps Coate only part implemented the permission granted at appeal.
Right.
But in coming to his conclusion, the inspector decided that on both elevations they were acceptable.
Right. And it seems to be that the applicant is prepared to accept a condition that would mean that the doors were actually closed at 9 p.m. I think.
Yes, that's right. We've heard from the agent, it was within the design and access statement,
Right.
and he's made that offer again this evening. So that would be open to members to amend condition 5
Yes.
on this item to restrict the hours to 9 p.m. rather than the hours proposed, which are more generous.
Right, okay. Now, colleagues, is there any further points you'd like to ask Ms. Hurrell or Lisa in relation to this first S73 application? Are there any other points? Dory?
I was just interested in the noise condition and this aspect, which is first mentioned in S73, I think. It says basically deal with the potential noise is to close them at 22 or 2100 hours, yes? I can't remember. It says, anyway, there's a closing time for closing the bifolding doors, yes? Yes.
That's
Right.
correct. Yeah, that's the condition I think the chairman was just referring to.
Sorry,
Suggests
could you speak up a bit?
that
Sorry
was
about that. Speak into the microphone. Don't look at me, look at the microphone.
That's correct. That was the condition I believe the chairman was just referring to, and was asking whether that could be amended to reflect 9 p.m. as offered by the agent this evening.
Right, because my question in general is about these things. If it turns out to be a problem, let's say it's granted, but it turns out to be a problem, although we have had no previous complaints about the previous situation when the previous restaurant was there, I think. In licensing, I know we're in planning here, but in licensing you can do things like apply temporary conditions, because in licensing, of course, you can call in a license and stop something, but in planning that's very different. But could one allow certain things for a limited time as an experiment, let's say for a year, and if it's no problem, then they can come back and ask for a variation or something like that on a permanent basis. Is that possible in planning?
It is possible within planning, but you do need to bear in mind the conditions tests are set out within the National Planning Policy Framework. One of those is it a reasonable condition? And I suppose in this instance I would say installing bifold doors and then only allowing them to open potentially for a year might be deemed a bit unreasonable in terms of the cost implications of installing those windows. You'd need to have sound justification to apply such a restrictive condition.
So what would you do if there's a real problem? I mean, you can call in noise and nuisance, I suppose, but it's just the concern that people have, and what comfort can we give residents if there is a problem? I mean, I don't think there will be one, but let's suppose there is one. What comfort can we give residents? Because like I said, in licensing, you can do something, whereas in planning, it's harder. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it is harder, and that is why there are separate regimes that deal with these matters. So yes, our noise and nuisance team is an obvious source of help, I suppose, should issues arise. We do sometimes see planning try and control the management of these premises. So you've seen in the past perhaps management plans conditioned where we might ask for a bit more detail. Although we've heard from the applicant tonight that everything would be shut up by 9 p.m, which I would suggest is quite reasonable, but if you felt that you needed to go further than that, then that might be an option that you wish to explore.
Okay,
Thank you. I think that covers it. Thank you very much.
thank you. Maxwell.
Thank you, Chair. I think the planning conspirator's previous decision pre-restricts what we can do on S73 when it comes to bifolding doors, because the fear is it will just get through on a bill if we say we don't want those bifolding doors. But I agree with amending condition 5 to restrict it to 9 p.m. is the best solution.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, any questions relating to S74? So this is relating to the awnings and the seats. Now, Sarah, we've heard that the applicant seems to be prepared to accept that the seats would actually be removed at 9 p.m. Presumably, we would adjust, it would be condition 4. We could adjust that to reflect that offer, in effect, yes?
That would be the easiest way to deal with it, yes. Interestingly, I would suggest that if they were removable, they probably then wouldn't actually require planning permission, given where the tables and chairs are located, which is on the private land of the restaurant. But we've heard the applicant offer that, so I think it would be reasonable for us to apply that condition and amend the condition to reflect that.
So in other words, our argument would be, we say, okay, the planning permission, has been sought, it's in front of us, we hear what's been said, by adjusting the condition, we can give effect to the offer that's been made and consider the application on that basis.
Yeah, so actually it's giving us more control, because they could, in theory, put tables and chairs there that are removable without even coming to us for permission. So we've got an opportunity here to actually put some restrictions on that use.
And just a final point, which I think probably applies to both the planning applications, just to make sure we're all clear about this, that I know having kind of scooters and delivery people kind of standing around outside premises, it can be irritating, but within the planning system, I can't really see how the planning system can really address things like that. It's just not part of our remit. Is that fair, or is there anything that can be done about things like that?
That is fair, and I also, again, would just encourage us to remember what the application is seeking. This isn't a change of use application. The use of that building in A3 use is long established now, and so any sort of condition looking to control that use, including things like deliveries and scooters, I think would be beyond the scope of what you could do under these applications.
Arian, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. Just checking, do the applicant have to apply for a licensing for change of usage on the timings or the outdoor seating, in addition to the planning? No?
Sorry, I didn't catch all of that question.
No, just checking, in terms of the changing timings in the future or change of layout, sorry, the seating on the highway, do they have to approach the license, or does the planning cover both?
I believe they still need a tables and chairs license for the placing of tables and chairs on private land. It's the planning permission that they don't require. So yes, any change I think would still have to go through the licensing committee.
Right, thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, sorry, did you want to ask? Okay, right. You okay? All right. Okay, so if we can please, we have two decisions, which obviously are separate decisions. So the first is on the first application, our packs, which is item S73, and the recommendation is to grant permission subject to the conditions, and we have said that we would, it's condition 5, that we would accept the applicant's offer that the doors would be closed at 9 p.m. So the condition would be altered to reflect that. With that change to the condition, the recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour of granting, please? Those against?
Chairman?
Yeah.
Sorry, as it's still a virtual meeting, Can you go around the table? I think it might be easier for people listening in.
Well, I can do if you like. I think, Dorry, did you vote in favour or not? Okay, it was unanimous, actually. So all 5 councillors, in fact, voted in favour? Yes. Okay, all right, thank you. If we can now move on to the next planning permission application, which is S74. So this is relating to the awnings and the seating. Now, again, the applicant has offered, in this case it would be condition 4, that the seating would be removed at 9 p.m. I would have thought that we should certainly consider that amendment and accept that. So again, the recommendation is to grant with those conditions.
If I may, Chairman, it would also be to amend condition 3 to reflect the 9 p.m. time as well. So it would be
Actually, yes, that's a good
conditions
point.
3 and conditions 4 would
Yes,
be
so
amended.
conditions 3 and 4 would be changed to reflect a 9 p.m. time.
Sorry, Chairman, can I just make one point regarding the 9 p.m. time? Obviously, that is the time that we've agreed that we would close the doors and stop serving patrons, but at that point, we can't just chase them off their seats. They still need to.
That's understood. That everyone understands that. Okay, so the recommendation is to grant with, obviously, adjustment to those 2 conditions. Can I see those in favour, please, of granting on that basis? Those against, so that's unanimous as well. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Now, we need to consider the advertising consent application, which is the next one in our pack. Katie, do you want to say anything just briefly about this application?
Just a reminder, so the signage under consideration is the blue lettering to the fascias on both frontages. It's the signage, the awning signage, and then there is the one projecting sign on the corner on the Fulham Road elevation.
Right. Okay. Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is that we grant the advertisement consent. Can I see those in favour of granting, please? So that again is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Good, thank you. Thanks very much indeed. If we could now move on to consider the application at Lansdowne Court, Lansdowne Crescent, and that is Fiona Ray. Fiona.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to apologise for the printing quality in your report pack for the drawings for this one.
Yeah.
I hope you all managed to have a look online, but I've included the drawings anyway for completeness. I'd also like to draw members' attention to the addendum report circulated, because we've proposed a revision to condition 3 within that pack. Turning to the slides now, I've just got a few images of the site on the screen for you for Lansdowne Court. There's 2 separate blocks built in the 1930s. They've got a glazed mansard that was originally allowed on appeal in 2004. So the existing mansard isn't in good condition, and we've seen in the supporting information that it needs substantial repairs, or, well, they're arguing a full replacement. And on the drawings, we can see the sort of floor space of it is directly comparable. But in elevation terms, there is a different design approach. This approach, as detailed in the report, is welcomed by our colleagues in the Sustainable Heritage and Design team. And you can see the changes here on each of the elevations, turning to the east and the north elevation. So it's got more of a vertical rise than the existing sloped glazed extension. The visuals that were included with the application are really helpful, so I've included these on the screen for you as well, showing the existing and proposed. Again, existing and proposed. And existing and proposed. Officers are recommending approval for the application, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Now, we have no speakers registered, so we move immediately to questions to officers. So who would like to go first? Maxwell.
Some of the comments talk about the massing of it. So it does seem because it's not sloped anymore. It's more of a just straight up square. Can massing be considered in planning terms as something that can be? Can massing be considered in planning terms? And my second question is to do with simply the design of it. Personally, I'm not sure I'm actually a fan of it, but I don't know if design quality is something that can be considered in planning terms as well. But those are my two questions.
Great question, because both are planning considerations, both massing and design, and it's something we've looked quite carefully at. It's a difficult building and a difficult site because the existing situation is what it is, and it's not something that we were supportive of as the local planning authority back when it was improved at appeal, but we now have this situation, it is there, and that is the sort of setting and the appearance of the building that we're seeking to now preserve. So turning to sort of the new proposal, it reflects the existing building in terms of its kind of profile. It's a different approach, it's a bit more solid, there's a greater degree of verticality to it, but overall, on balance, we believe it preserves the conservation area and respects the kind of proportions of the main building, which is why we've recommended approval.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, comments to Fiona Ray?
Just a quick question, which of course has already been said is not valid in terms of the speculative development that the owner does not live here or does not have the intention to live in the property. We understand as already answered here, but is there anything that the planning can take into consideration where local residents feel not right being done, whereas someone who does not leave the property or someone who is not occupying the recent property can cause all the issues or the noises that come up with the development?
Unfortunately not. The landowner, the property owner is not a material planning consideration at all, I'm afraid. We can't attach any weight to it, sort of who owns it.
That's fine, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we need to make a decision about this. What do people feel? I have to say, in terms of its design, I'm sort of somewhat underwhelmed personally, but one can be underwhelmed by something that is still actually acceptable. So I think, you know, the recommendation is to grant, and I think it's difficult, but I think we probably, I'm inclined to go along with it. But what do other people think? What do Maxwell?
Thank you, Chair. I think I mostly agree with what you're saying. I mean, it's not the greatest design, but we live in the here and now. That's what's there. And I don't think in planning terms, if we said, no, we don't like the design of it, I think it probably would get for an appeal. So, no, I think it's acceptable.
Does anyone disagree with that kind of train of thought? No?
Well, it's just a replacement of the current existing roof extension, so I've got no issues with that.
No, okay. I think actually that's, I agree with you. I think the current, the current sort of mansard type structure is obviously very large and prominent, and I think that, I agree, that tends to defeat the strength of an objection to what's proposed, the fact that there's already an extremely large, rather heavy, sort of dominant top of the existing building, I think. Okay, well, thanks for your comments. So the recommendation in front of us is to grant with the conditions attached, including, I think, just remind me, was it condition 3 that you said in the addendum?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, okay. All right, so can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? Okay, so that is approved. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. So if we can now move on, and we're staying in the North Pack, to 33 Pangbourne Avenue. Fiona.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I'm just grabbing my notes. Apologies. Nothing to report on the addendum other than a quick correction. Everything else is as per the report. I've just included an aerial image on the screen because I thought it would be really helpful to see the kind of context of the site, because there's a lot of information within the report about existing extensions along the group of properties, yet in the photographs submitted you can only see that there's no extensions either side. So on that aerial image you can see, going towards the south, a variety of rear extensions. Now, the report goes into detail in paragraph 6.7 about the depths of them and the varied depths. So it goes from 3 metres to a maximum of 3.6 metres. And you can see that evidenced on that aerial image. Turning to the site photographs, now the proposal is not just for that rear extension I've highlighted, but a rear dormer as well. You can see the neighbouring properties rear dormer within the context of the application site. Again, it's difficult to see the rear extensions that fall further down because the immediate 2 properties either side don't have rear extensions. And with the ground floor plans, we can see that rear extension towards the back, projecting to a depth of 3.6 metres. And in terms of the proposed elevations, you can see the new rear dormer window proposed and the new ground floor rear extension and its design. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Dorry and then Maxwell.
Thanks. For me, sort of a key question is that's raised in paragraph 6.6 and 6.7 about the 3.6 metre extension. The officer's report says it's not a precedent, but an architect living around there says that the nearby projections are only 3 metres. So that's my concern, is there's an apparent contradiction in views of what is around there, because it also, for the 3.6 metres, it says, the wider view, I can't remember the exact words, but the word wider is in there, the wider view. But surely what we have to look at is what's around there, then depends on how wide is the view one takes. And the second thing in this relation, in this connection, is Mr. and Mrs. Godin's comment about wastewater pipes and plantings, and they're not the only ones to refer to plantings. So could you please comment on that? First of all, the apparent contradiction between 3 metres and 3.6 metres extension, and the second thing, what about the effect on plantings and pipes, which are only 2 feet below ground?
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Chairman, the rear extension issue, in terms of the overall depth, we have a policy relating to residential extensions, which is policy CL9, and it talks about how extensions sit near each other, how they relate in terms of their footprint, their depth, their rhythm, and so on. So there's no such thing as precedent in planning, so just because one person has it, it doesn't mean you automatically get it again. Every case has to be assessed on its own merits. However, we do have to look at the wider context of an area, the wider group, and that policy specifically says that. It says, look around, see what's there, and relate in scale and kind to that. So with this particular property, the nearest extension, I understand, to be 3 metres. So the one that is nearest to this application property, because the 2 properties either side don't have one at all, so they have no extensions. But if you look on the aerial image that I've just put up on the screen again, we have lots of other extensions along that group, along that established kind of pattern. So we'll be turning to them for what potentially could be acceptable here. And the largest one of those is 3.6 metres deep. So if we're looking for a line, a kind of maximum, a footprint that works in that context, it's 3.6 metres that we believe is acceptable, and that's why we've come to the conclusion that this one, we are recommending approval. Do you want to add another point, or shall I continue with planting through you, Chairman?
Pardon? Sorry?
Shall I continue a question on planting? Yep. So with regard to planting, we only have control over protected trees, whether that be in their conservation area designation or whether they have a TPO on them. So just general planting, even if it is established, unfortunately, we can't refuse planning permission based on the loss of that. So that's kind of a civil matter to resolve if there is established planting that could potentially be disrupted. Thank you.
Yeah, could I just come back on the first part, which is about the depth extension? Mr. Smith's comment are quite clear about this. He talks about the adjacent premises, 31, 29, and he said well, he's not so definite about it, but he suggests that he says that a lot of the between 15 and 29 they do not project 3.6 meters. So I'm just wondering really about that.
Yeah,
I accept the no precedent issue, because I mean he talks about precedent, but I understand, you know, you can't, there's no such thing as a precedent, although of course there is sometimes, especially with roof extension, all that sort of thing, so we can't rule them out. They do exist in de facto, if not de jure.
well, all I can do is explain how we came to our conclusion. So on the screen in front of you, this aerial image, we can see a number of rear extensions, and that's what we're turning to. We've then looked at it, so thought, yeah, a rear extension is acceptable, it's similar to others in the group. We then need to pick into how deep it could go in order to preserve that character and appearance of that area. And then in paragraph 6.7, the officers have gone through the kind of historic examples and noted all the different ones. But I think the objector is correct in that the nearest rear extensions aren't as big, the immediate nearest. However, we're looking at the character of the area, the overall context, and there are examples to the same depth within that group.
Thank you.
Councillor Schmetling has actually already asked my question about this 3 metre business. Oh, right. But that was it. Thanks.
Thank you. Kasim.
Just two questions about the property in question. We know from recently the flooding in the north of the borough has damaged quite a lot of properties, and we know residents, some of them are still in hotels. So, and this property falls within the North Kensington critical drainage area. So, what ground or what measure has been done in light with the latest information about the drainage and the flooding we had? So that's one question. The second question is the proposer or the applicant somehow incorrectly misled while stating extension has been granted the nearby properties, for example 29, to 3.6 meters. So I think that is also being mentioned here that it's not 3.6, but it's 3 meters extension. Can you clarify that? Is there any statement for is it 3.6 the limit or 3 meters the limit? Can you please clarify on this too? Thank you.
I'll try and answer the second question first, in that there's a variety of depths. I think that's the key issue. So the deepest one along the whole terrace group is 3.6 metres. However, there are the other examples that are limited to 3 metres. So there's a degree of variation of about 600 between all of them. And we've come to the conclusion that we're comfortable with 3.6, given that there's enough examples and enough variation to justify it. So that's answering the question on the depth. With regard to flooding, this is a really key issue that you've highlighted. And in our report, we do explain that we haven't got the level of information we would need with regard to flooding. So we've requested by condition 5, which is a pre-commencement condition, so they won't be able to start any work on the scheme at all without getting it discharged. We need a flood risk assessment to detail any flood risk measures, and also sustainable urban drainage information to show how they will improve the situation on site. Because they're increasing the build, they need to put in some measures that will improve the situation and deal with that surface water drainage. So a key issue to highlight. Thank you.
Very good. Any other points, any other questions? No? Okay. So I think we need to make a decision on this. The recommendation is to grant. I think this issue of the 3.6 metres or 3 metres, I think if there is nearby an extension that is 3.6, I think we really are quite difficult ground saying that it's not acceptable. So I think that probably addresses that issue, which obviously neighbours have raised. So the recommendation is to grant with the conditions attached, which includes the pre-commencement condition relating to drainage. Can I see those in favour of granting, please? Okay, so that's granted, and that's unanimous as well. Thank you. Now, if we can return to the South Pack and 11 Polton Street, which is Katie Hurrell. Katie.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'll start the presentation with an aerial view of the application site, as I think the context is key here. The property in question is the one there marked by the red arrow, so on the end of that little group of 3 buildings within the terrace. Also, just to note, the neighbouring closet wing extension, which I've marked on with the yellow arrow, at the property at number 12 Porton Street, and just to note that there is no established rhythm or consistency in the rear elevations of these properties. In terms of the proposal, permission is sought for an extension to the closet wing at the application site. So there's a second storey proposed. That would bring the height of the closet wing in line with the neighbour at number 12, which I just showed you. And then a 2-storey glazed infill extension, which will be located next to the closet in the recess between the 2 closet wings of the properties. Highlighted there in the circle in the red, just to show you where that infill would be, and just to also show you there is a comparable infill extension at number 12 next door, and that the building line of the extension would match that building line. Lastly, just in section, just to show you again the increase in height of the closet wing. Also just to show you there is an existing large ground floor extension which extends right to the boundary. Under the application originally, it was also proposed to extend on top of this, and that has been removed from the proposals, but you'll note that some of the objections still refer to this part of the scheme. So just to clarify, that has been removed from the proposals. And that's it. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Any questions relating to this application? Dory.
I mean, I have a question really about the worry by a number of the objectors, including Maria Bentley, about the impact on neighbours. I mean, the ongoing, not the construction impact, the actual impact on neighbours. Do you think it's excessive, the worry? I mean, you know, they do worry about it, so what would you say in response to that?
Again, reading those objections, I think a lot of it refers to the part of the scheme that was removed, which was the additional extension, which would have been accessible. So in terms of the impact on the neighbours, other than the construction works, once built out, there's no new external space compared to what's there already. And then in terms of daylight, sunlight or sense of enclosure, given the configurations of the properties and the fact that the built form would just match that of next door, officers are content there'd be no material impact.
Thanks.
Any other points? No. I think the fact that the next door building has a closet wing that is in a very, very similar form has to be a factor that we need to take account of. If there are no other questions, I think we can probably
I
make
just want to
a
mention
decision.
one
Dorothy,
thing,
do you want to,
Chair.
just final question?
Sorry, yeah, thank you. I mean, in the letter, for example, from the Sharifs, Dr. and Mrs. Sharif, it does refer to, well, likely to compromise natural daylight levels for residential windows on Paulton Square. Are you saying that perhaps not reading the plan quite right?
I don't want to make any assumptions, but as I say, the application, when it was first submitted, included an additional extension that has been removed. So it may well be that that's what they're referring to. That said, officers are satisfied that in terms of the daylight and impact and any new windows, there would be no harm to the neighbouring properties on the immediate neighbour at number 12 or those properties on Paulton Square.
Okay, good. So recommendation in front of us is to grant. Can I see those in favour, please? So that is granted. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now I'm going to stay in the South Pack and move to consider 20 Canning Place. Katie, that's you again, I think.
It is, thank you. There's no plans on this application, but I'll just very briefly talk you through the considerations. So in 2017, the Planning Committee granted an application for a change of use from office to medical use, and as part of that permission, a condition was attached which restricted the use of that site as a doctor's surgery to 2 named doctors. The application before you this evening is seeking to remove this condition to allow other practitioners to use the premises for medical use. So that's what's under consideration. I do think it's worth just briefly touching upon the use class order. So members will be familiar with the use class order, which categorises land uses into categories. And within the same use class, it is permitted development to sort of change a use within the same class. You'll know this was amended in September 2020, and the new use class E was created. And within that class, both office use, so the old B1, and the medical use is within the same use class. So in theory, if the doctors currently using this premises were to vacate and the use would revert back to an old office use, permission then wouldn't be required from us to use it as a medical use anyway under the new use class. So this is a strange scenario where, again, we're actually being given the opportunity to exercise more control. You'll note under this application we recommend a condition that says, yes, okay, it now no longer needs to be restricted to those 2 named doctors, but we will restrict it to only be used as medical use and no other use within use class E. So I would say that this is an opportunity to have greater control than we would otherwise. I hope that makes sense. Happy to answer any questions if there are any on that.
Thanks. I mean, it does make sense, but the question I have really is, can we actually, I think you're indicating this, can we actually stop any of these changes of use? I mean, by removing the condition, but then saying it can only be for medical use if the subsequent operator doesn't want an office, is that actually enforceable? Let's say the subsequent operator would like to use it for another use that's in use class E. Can we stop that?
It is within our gift to apply conditions of this nature to restrict uses within a certain use class, should they apply for it. Yes, absolutely, as long as we had reasonable planning grounds to do so. So in this instance it would be the fact that there are residential properties nearby and that we consider other uses within Class E to be unacceptable because they might have a harmful impact on those living nearby. The fact that they've applied to vary this condition on the original application gives us the opportunity to review it as afresh and apply new conditions if we deem them to be necessary.
Thanks. Actually, that's quite useful to know because I was already getting rather concerned because of the variety of uses in use Class E that you can wind up with someone going in, not necessarily here, but in general, and putting in something that's really difficult for the residents nearby. So you're saying we can actually control that under certain circumstances?
We can in this instance because they have made a specific application relating to the land use of that site. What we can't do is sort of pick and choose and go out and proactively apply conditions to uses that are already operating, for example.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maxwell and then Kessin.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I'm the local councillor in this ward. I actually think it's quite a good change, and particularly with condition 5, keeping this for medical use. But logically speaking, just having as 2 named doctors in the long term doesn't make sense. So I think this is a good change. So yeah, good application.
Thank you. Kessin.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the traffic levels and the increase of the noise pollution, can you give us a bit more how this, I know it's been already mentioned, double yellow lines and so on, what will be the effect of the noise and the noise pollution and the traffic levels in the area?
I would suggest very little, if any, impact. The use is established and has been for a number of years now as a medical use. There are no proposed changes to the size of the practice or anything like that, so I would say it would be a reasonable assumption that it would continue to operate as it does now, and I don't believe there's been many reported problems. I think a couple of the objections referred to vehicles waiting, but it seems as though that might have been a one-off.
Good. Well, we can make a decision, I think, on this. So the recommendation is to grant with the conditions set out, including the restrictive condition 5 that we've discussed. So can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? Okay, so that's unanimous again. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Katie, we're staying with you because we are moving to the railings at Chelsea Common, Cale Street.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just some photographs really to show you this evening. So you'll be familiar, most of you, with the application site. Here's the common, and there are these black railings that run around the grassy area. It is proposed to simply remove these railings, and that is the sole thing that is being considered this evening. I will just say it is part of a wider plan for the common that the council is pursuing, seating and pedestrianising one part of the road there. But just to clarify, that is not for consideration this evening. The only thing to assess is the impact of the removal of those railings. The last 2 slides, just to illustrate, there's the existing situation, and here's sort of the aspirational image of the longer term plans, but also it just shows you there what the common would look like without the railings in situ.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I have to say I've never seen a CGI image of anything that didn't make it look incredibly attractive. But are there any questions about this? I think there's as officers have indicated, there's a sort of wider issue of, are we in favour of these kind of pedestrianisation schemes? But that's something different. This is just about whether permission is granted for the removal of these railings. So I think it's a very, very narrow issue. Maxwell, do you want to?
Curious, just 2 things. One, how long have those railings been there for, out of curiosity? And I guess, obviously, I don't think this hopefully is an issue, but I guess the railings do give some kind of protection for people sitting in the square. But then again, the railings also give the view that people shouldn't be going in the square. So if you're trying to open things up, I guess you don't want the railings anymore.
Very good questions, and I think very pertinent points. Yep, you could look at it in both ways. I think the aspiration is that without the railings, that space might be utilised better. It will be more clear that it is public space than it is at the moment. In terms of how long they've been there, I'm afraid I don't know, other than to say a long time.
Thank you. Okay, well, in that case, the recommendation is that we grant permission for this, and, well, subject to the, well, it's only 2 conditions, of course. So can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? Okay, so that's granted. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now we return to the North Pack for the industrial unit on Latimer Road. And I think, Fiona, that's back to you, isn't it?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The most important thing with this application is to just highlight that this is for a certificate of lawful use. So this isn't an application where we consider or balance the issues around it. It's just we need to make a decision as the local planning authority whether or not planning permission is required for an existing use or development. And here, as explained in the report, the use has been in operation as B8 since March 2021. And up until July 2021, that change of use did not require planning permission. And so that's what officers want to confirm and seek to confirm in granting a certificate of lawfulness there. There is one thing that may be helpful to members, just for information, if more than anything, that there is the sale of alcohol as part of that B8 use. So there are different regimes to control certain things around the licence. But planning permission is not required for a change of use here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any particular points about this, Maxwell?
If planning permission is not required for change of use, what is there left to consider?
There is nothing to consider. It's purely an application to confirm that. So the applicant doesn't need to apply for this. It is their choice to get confirmation from the local planning authority to reduce risk and so on. So that it's just based on the use class order, the way it's operating now.
Just to clarify, if we objected to this, they could do it anyway. Just clarify.
Yeah,
Right.
Unfortunately, yes.
I should just note that actually our colleague, Councillor Thaxter, actually asked for this to come to committee. So I think that's actually the reason it's on the agenda, in fact. But I think Mrs. Ray has made clear that we're actually considering something quite narrow here. Dorrie, did you want to ask?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make a comment which would be good if it's minuted. I mean, obviously, if you heard in the recording, is that one of the objectors, or one of the concerns raised was about noise and nuisance, which is actually not covered by this. But as pointed out in the report, there is a licence granted which does help control these things, and in general that is true for other premises. So I'd just like to appeal to residents, if they got a noise and nuisance problem, if they're disturbed, report it to the council. There's a report a problem page on the council website making such reports very simple. If you can't find it, ask your local ward councillor. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for that point. Are there any other questions relating to the certificate issue? In which case, the recommendation is that we grant the certificate. Can I see those in favour of doing that, please? Okay, so that is agreed. Thank you very much.
Yes.
We can now move on to the discharge of conditions at 146 to 164 Notting Hill Gate. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. So this...
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, Dorrie, if you just take a seat there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Fiona, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for the discharge of a condition relating to a coach and taxi management plan at the new hotel that was granted here in December 2019. So the condition wanted details of that. We now have the details and we've included that in full in the report pack for you. And you can see, most importantly, that there are no coaches and no minibuses proposed to service the hotel through them. So there are details of taxi drop-offs as well, which detail sort of waiting arrangements and how the staff will manage them. And our transport team are fully satisfied that the plan is acceptable. If there were coaches to be proposed, we would have been concerned about how they are managed, but no coaches and no minibuses are now proposed, and that is confirmed within that statement. That concludes my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, because I think this issue of coaches was the principal concern that local residents had raised, really. So that essentially the key objection has been addressed. Anyone got any other questions about this? I think that's fairly clear. Okay. Well, in that case, here the recommendation is that we approve the submitted details. So can I see those in favour of doing that, please? Okay, so that is approved. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Chairman, can we have a 5-minute break?
Yes, let's take a short break, just a few minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Really? Dory, you should have taken a break, Dory.
No, no, that's right. Also, it can be very echoey. These microphones sometimes are more so I know, like Katie, also if you're very close to it, it sort of echoes around. Oh, but you could hear better. Yes. I appreciated that. No, no.
Should we go and find him?
Anne, do you mind just going out to see if Councillor Ali is I think he may have been making a phone call, but we're ready to start. Thanks. Very good. Well, we can resume, I think. So if we can now move on to Farm Cottage in Farm Place. Fiona.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So planning permission was granted in February 2021 for various things, including the lowering of the floor level. And because of the sensitive nature of Hillgate Village and the narrow streets around it, a CTMP condition was recommended. Now, it was the Planning Committee, or the Planning Applications Committee, apologies, that heard that recommendation and agreed, but given how sensitive that site is, wanted to see the final CTMP version and make the decision here. So that's why it's before you this evening. I've just put an image up of the approved drawing showing that lowering. Whilst it's not a basement in the purest sense, it would still involve construction traffic that could potentially harm the narrow streets of Hillgate Village. But we have been presented with a well thought out CTMP for these streets. The loading arrangements are appropriate and they do sort of benefit from being in the corner position, so it's the pay and display bays and the yellow lines that they can utilise. But most importantly, they're using transit style vehicles, so small vehicles rather than any large or heavy construction ones to go around the street. They've also thought carefully about the route in and out of the site, creating an almost sort of one-way system in and through to minimise how many streets are affected. And this is the kind of best practice and the best solution for such a difficult site. Transport are happy with the proposal and officers are recommending approval.
Thank you. Questions?
That's just one question.
Sorry.
I don't know if you've got the answer to that. Do you know what the estimated construction time is?
It's definitely in the plan, which is within the report pack, so I can answer that for you. Yeah, it's question 33. Yeah, thank you. Lisa's just highlighting to me. It's anticipated to last 26 weeks, site set up 1 week, excavation 12, fit out 12, and site clear up 1 week. So estimated at 26 weeks overall.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, I think the plan does actually look well worked out, and clearly many of the streets are very narrow, but if you are using narrow-bodied vehicles, then I think something can be made to work. So the recommendation is that we approve the submitted details to discharge the condition. So can I see those in favour of that, please? Okay, so that is agreed. Thank you. Very much. And finally this evening, the application at Tor Gardens.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So the final application relates to 1 Tor Gardens. The plans on the screen in front of you now show the recently approved application versus what is proposed now. And you'll see towards the rear, coming off the sort of sitting area at the back, a small terrace is proposed over part of that flat roof of the extension. It's also seen clearly on these rear elevations. So the recent approval showed a sort of Juliet-style balcony that had no access out at all, replaced with a kind of small area of that roof to be used as a terrace. In section, we can just see the depth of it as it sits against the neighbouring terrace adjacent down Tor Gardens. And then these images I found to be really helpful, which are visuals showing the neighbour's perspective. So there's also, if you look at these, you can see kind of the size and the degree of outdoor space being created and the relationships in neighbouring buildings. But there are some really helpful photos submitted by the objector as well that have been included in your pack. So you will see that whilst they kind of look over to that site at the moment, there is kind of a blank wall. There's no sort of view back, but officers have really carefully considered that relationship, and given the degree of overlooking in the whole area, we are satisfied that it wouldn't be so harmful as to warrant a refusal on the grounds of overlooking, and we are recommending approval. Thank you.
Any questions, colleagues? Yeah? Okay, well, in that case, recommendation is to grant permission with the conditions set out in the report. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? So that is granted unanimously again. Very good. Well, thank you very much indeed, and thank you, and very good evening. Thank you.